So, welcome to this presentation on qualitative research. And in this presentation, I will be basing what I say on two readings, which I do encourage you to read. One is from this book, which we've referred to before. So chapter 16 is an introduction to qualitative research, and another publication by the Trent Focus Group. And yes, so please do refer to them, because they will do it in more depth than I can present in this presentation, where I'm just providing a summary. So what is qualitative research? Again, we have more presentations in these modules about qualitative research, but just in summary, qualitative research involves gathering data from and about people. It focuses on description and interpretation. It helps us understand and explain social phenomena. It uses a naturalistic approach rather than a scientific or an experimental approach, and it uses an inductive approach to analyze data. Just a comment about the description and the interpretation. We're interested in rich description and interpretation. And I remember hearing one qualitative researcher explain it this way, that her children were playing in the yard, and one child would come running in and say, "Oh, mummy, look at the trees that are falling off the tree. They're beautiful, they're brown and they're green, and look at the yellows." And the other child would come in and say, Mummy, I counted 100 leaves that fell from the tree." And so it's a different way of understanding what's around us through doing qualitative research versus quantitative research. So when do we use qualitative research in health? Well, we want to explore and we want to generate theories about health and social phenomena. We want to study social and psychological and health behaviors where context may be important. So we want to know about the context that they occur. We want to supplement quantitative research, because quantitative research is counting numbers and might not have the depth that is needed over particular aspects of it. And often qualitative research is done initially to generate and explore theories and to generate hypotheses, which are then subsequently used in quantitative research to actually test. Okay. So which qualitative methods are appropriate? So this will depend partly on your question and what information you want to get. But for example, you may decide that you want to do field observation, where you would be sitting in a situation and taking notes and watching. You might want some sensitive information from participants, and really the best way to do that might be in an in-depth interview, where it's just you and the participant, and you've gained trust and they're confident that the information they give you will be confidential, and you might be able to actually explore in depth a particular issue. Focus groups would be where you want a group of, say, 6 to 8 people, and the beauty of focus groups is that people start generating ideas that are bouncing off each other. So you might ask an open-ended question and you'll get different data than if you actually were one-on-one with that person, with any one of those individuals. And then another type of method of qualitative research is document analysis, where you will look at different types of documents from different sources, and you're trying to review them and synthesize and actually pull it together and generate hypotheses or generate your findings from analyzing these documents in a systematic way. So if you decide that you're going to be conducting an interview or a focus group, you would need to develop a semi-structured interview guide, and this would have lots of open-ended questions. So if you're wanting to encourage discussion about a particular topic, you wouldn't be asking questions that end in yes or no. You have to ask them in such a way that they're not threatening, but that they will actually provoke discussion about the topic that you're particularly interested in. You also want to be able to, in a focus group, you want to be able to facilitate the discussion so that everybody in the focus group feels comfortable speaking, and you should be thinking about how you would facilitate that discussion so that the talkative ones you could somehow bring out the quieter ones and ask the louder ones to give airspace to some of the others. Traditionally we record by audio tape, or obviously now cell phones can record, but you traditionally do a recording of your discussion, and then later you would transcribe that so that you're actually writing out verbatim what people are saying, and then you will make it into an anonymous transcript so people can't be identified from that. You also, because the audio tape won't pick this up, you as the facilitator of the focus group or the interview, you would also make notes afterwards about the mood, the tone, and the nonverbal behavior. So you want to record as much contextual information as you can about how that focus group went. So the next thing I want to talk about is sampling in qualitative research. And you will have another video on sampling in the quantitative modules. And that video presentation is given by the statistician, and he will focus on sampling in quantitative research designs, where often the focus is random sampling, or the focus is on trying to get a representative sample that's representing the population of interest. And so there's a lot of thought and work gone into how you actually sample participants for a quantitative project. Similarly, in qualitative, there's a lot of thought into why you would sample a certain way, and you have to rationalize why you've chosen this particular way. So really the commonest types of sampling in qualitative research would be purposive or convenience or snowball sampling. And it's because you are particularly interested in a particular topic or an issue, and you want to explore it in more depth. Therefore, you have to pick your participants in a way that you will get the information you need. So purposive would be if you say, I'm really, really interested in finding out more about the health goals of men who are leaving correctional institutions, and I'm really interested in the older men. So you'd be looking at trying to invite men who are over the age of 65 who've recently left a correctional facility, and you'd be wanting to meet with them to find out in a very purposeful way what their health goals are. So that would be an example of purposive sampling. Now, in terms of convenience sampling, sometimes convenience is as it sounds. It's actually what is available to you. You might not have access to a wide population, but you are very interested in this topic, and so these are the people that you actually can invite at this point in time to actually come and talk to you about this. And you might just invite sequential people to come and to actually come and explore this issue. And so it just happens to be the first 10 people who meet the criteria, and you're just going to be inviting them to take part in your project. And snowball sampling is a technique that we use if we actually not sure quite how to access participants, but you've got a couple of participants and you say to them, please could you actually ask your friends and people that you know in your community to see if any other people would be interested in taking part of this. So it's literally like throwing a snowball out and then actually getting participants that way. And usually in qualitative research, you don't really know what your sample size is to begin with. You have an idea because you're actually restrained by your time limits and your resources, and there is a sort of how many, you can only do so many. But in fact, many qualitative researchers will continue doing their in-depth interviews or their focus groups or whatever, and they will continue doing it until they're getting saturation of themes. So after they've done some, they'll start analyzing their data and they'll continue to do more interviews and focus groups. But once they start getting saturation of themes and no new themes are coming up, in fact they're getting some redundancy of some of the themes, then they know that they've actually reach saturation and they don't actually need any more participants for their study. I'm now going to talk about ensuring quality in qualitative research. And Dr. John Olaf has also talked about trustworthiness in qualitative research in his presentation, and it's similar kind of themes. There's a number of things that we can do. So reflexivity is the acknowledgement that a researcher might bring influence to the research process. So because we have certain biases, we have certain power relationships, we have to be reflecting on how we're actually influencing the data that we're gathering and how we're influencing the interpretation of it. So we have to be mindful of that and even reflect on that in our work as we're doing it. The audit trail is keeping copious notes about the process and carefully documenting all stages. So every little piece of it, the challenges, the barriers, and what we're doing in the process. The methods, we have to explain and justify the methods that we use and the methods we use to collect the data and the methods we use to analyze the data. We talked a little bit about the sampling strategy and the sampling size. We have to again document why we're using certain sampling strategies and why we've gotten to a certain size. And if it's because of lack of resources and I can't do any more focus groups, then that needs to be documented. The quality of analysis, it's important when you're doing qualitative analysis that you're not doing it by yourself. Yes, you can do the analysis, but it's important to engage other co-investigators or associates, collaborators to also do the analysis to actually ensure that we're all working on this together. And we should be looking for doing the work separately, but then coming together to see where we are actually in convergence and agreeing on the analysis. And then triangulation is where we're looking at different sources of information or data or knowledge and to see if where our analysis is actually converging with established theories or emerging theories or different ways of looking at this particular research findings. Member checking is a really important piece, so that if you have participants that have been involved in the research process, you can go back to them and say, look, we've done some preliminary analysis on the focus groups. Does this make sense? Is this what you said? Is there anything that we've missed? And then going back and just checking to see if the conclusions that you're drawing from the analysis resonates with their experience. Lastly, we've got a slide here. We decided not to do a whole presentation on this because it may soon go out of date. But people talk about using software in qualitative analysis to help you. And in fact, qualitative software, what it will do is help to organize your work, but it actually doesn't do the work for you. So Dr. John Olaf has given you quite a detailed video presentation on actually how you do analysis with paper and pens and felt pens. And there are certain guidelines in terms of when one needs to be investing in software, but basically the type of research project that you might be embarking on, if you're looking at few participants, few focus groups, few in-depth interviews, these are all quite easily done using paper and pen and coding in that way. But if you are interested in the software, there's these 4 different programs that are available. NVivo is commonly used. Atlas TI is also quite often used. I'm not as familiar with the others, the MaxQDA and the Deduce. But there are links to all of these softwares, and here is a table that actually shows the differences between the 2, or between the 4, I should say. So there's advantages and there's disadvantages for each of them. Most of them do have downloadable demo products so you can actually look at them. All right, so the next slide shows a table that actually gives guidelines for when it is advised that you should invest in some software to help organize your data. But as you can see from the next slide, that actually probably the scope of what you're planning to do is perfectly acceptable to do it the old-fashioned way. So thank you very much.